thank you all for being clever enough to join us for Naudé taste along with the man himself. Some of you will have been on a call very similar to this previously, which was set up with Blind Faith. Robbie from Blind Faith is with us this evening. That was just before Naudé Wines joined the Museum Wines portfolio. So this is the first one with a proper importer involved. And so, yeah, I'm not going to waffle on too much. This will give me great pleasure to hand you over to Ian Naudé, the old vine specialist. And you've got some cracking wines to tantalize those taste buds with on a whatever we are, Wednesday evening in the sunshine. No rosé, though.
Is it me, Daniel?
You're up.
Okay. Right. Hi, everybody. I wish I could change the scenery here because that's my Stellenbosch screen. I'm sitting in Greece, in Athens right now, and having the best time ever, and slightly suicidal depressed because I'm going home tomorrow. And I just heard that it rained over 100 and something millimeters. So I'm trying anything to delay, but it's not going to work. so I'm sitting in a wine bar in the middle of Athens. And tell me, is the sound all right for everybody? It's
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, some of the faces I know I've seen before. And Daniel, do you want us to start?
Yeah, crack on. So
perfect.
We're there might be a few late comers, but I mean they're 6 minutes late already, so maybe they're not joining at all. So let's not dilly dally. Yeah, crack on.
Perfect. Yeah, I know. I'm definitely not going to bore you with the whole history and all those things. Naudé Wines. Yeah, I've been born and raised in South Africa. Lived there my whole life. I don't know, 8th or 9th generation. And what I loved about it is I speak to a lot of people and who visit South Africa, and I always joke and I say, we have to make things work in South Africa because we're not as lucky as you guys. You can emigrate to Europe or to other countries. And the only country we can go further south is Antarctica, and I don't think they make wine there. So I'm stuck there and I have to make it work, which I'm really happy to do. I just want to start off with, I've been making wine for 20 odd years. And I studied at Elsenburg Wine School, and I was born and raised in Durbanville, which is about, between Cape Town and Stellenbosch. And wine farming was one of those things where a lot of the farmers did that, but all the grapes went to the co-op. And it was kind of weird because wine was kind of a factory job. I knew some people who worked in a winery, but it was like, this guy works in a dairy, that wants to do an office job, and this guy works in a winery. So for me, it was always one of those things. My dad had a dairy farm in Durbanville, and we had grapes, and those grapes went to a co-op in Paarl. And I was always kind of intrigued, but it was never something I thought of doing. And then as I grew up, I really wanted to do something special and something interesting. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take over the dairy farm. And I went to Elsenburg Agriculture School. And at Elsenburg, it was one of those things where the first course was 2 years long. And I thought after 2 years, I'm not ready to go to the farm. I should do something else. Student life is too good, and I should really try to expand the student life. It was interesting. There was 3 courses, and winemaking just sounded the fun thing to do, and I did that. And I always say when I travel and people ask me how many generations are you, and it's like, nope, 1st generation, and they go, but how did you become a winemaker and everything? And I'm too embarrassed to tell the story because I think if you ask them, no, I'm the 10th generation, and my grandfather got this chateau. I've got no of those stories. For me, it's about the wine. It's about trying to do the best I can. And it's interesting because I was one of those, I think, lucky people who grew up in apartheid years who you were kind of stripped of everything. And then 94, everything changed. And we were thrown into the deep end. And I'm going to jump now, because when I finished Elsenburg, I thought my ticket out, as every Australian and New Zealander and South Africa do, we wanted to see the rest of the world, because you didn't get exposure of any of that. And I thought my ticket out would be to go and work abroad, but we were not allowed to work. So I thought, okay, with winemaking, I could try it. But at that stage, it was me, Ibn Sadi, and one or two other guys who worked abroad, but we were not allowed to get paid. And that was good enough for us. And then my first job was in America, and this whole thing opened for me. And then I went to Germany and France and Italy and Israel and back to America. And I did for about 10 years. I did about, 20 vintages, 2 a year. And there's a good reason where there's supposed to be only one vintage that you should do a year, because it's tough. And I think I'm kind of ready to retire, because I feel I'm 20 years ahead of the rest. I've got my T-shirt for honesty. And when I came back every time to South Africa, I would harvest Northern Hemisphere, and then I would come back to South Africa, and then I would sit and think, okay, where next? But I needed the money to buy an aeroplane ticket and to go out. And then me and Eben would kind of swap jobs. He would go to the places I was, I would go to the places where he was. And this new whole world opened for me. And now I'm going to go back to where we started. And for 10 years, I traveled and I made wine in all these countries, but I always knew I wanted to come back to South Africa. Every time that plane landed and I saw Table Mountain, I knew this is where I want to stay. And it was beautiful, because the world was open to us. And we had a history of 365 years of winemaking in South Africa, but it was just a co-op thing. And there was nothing exciting, there was nothing. But working abroad, I always realized there must be more to all of this. And it was interesting, because I came back and even and myself would sit down and say, but what makes, if you walk into a wine shop in London, you've got Italy, Spain, Germany, France. Okay, France has got a whole wall. Australia, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, you go around the corner. And it was the worst thing about 25 years ago. I would walk into wine shops and I would ask, do you have South African wine? And they go, yeah, right at the back, there's 2 bottles. One is called the Big One, and the other one is 2 Oceans. It's like, we've got a long way to go. And you didn't know, what can we present to the world that's different? Because the saddest thing was, then England came down to South Africa, and they were very keen to get our wines in the market. But they would send the wine buyers from Marks and Spencer and Tesco's and Sainsbury's, and they would come down and say, listen, what's really, really good selling in the UK right now is mostly Chardonnay from America. So please, you have to make me a Chardonnay that tastes like American. It's like, firstly, you're on the wrong continent. Secondly, why would I want to do that? And then the bosses would hear that and they go, yeah, you're going to make that wine. You copy. And I always felt if you copy, you're second best or third best, you're never the best. And then they would come down again and they would say, okay, what's really hot now is Australian Shiraz. Then 3 years later, they would come down, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is really hot. And what's the saddest thing for me was always, we fought for the bin end in odd bins. That was our biggest goal, was to get into that bin end in your wines itself. It was usually 3 bottles for £10. And then the Queen had a birthday or somebody had a birthday, and then it's 4 bottles for £10. So we never got to that point where we were taken seriously. Then even and myself sat and we thought, what would make South Africa interesting? And cut a long story short, we got to a point where we said, terroirs is our biggest selling point, because you guys have been to South Africa. It's a 400-kilometer radius, roughly, the Western Cape. But in that Western Cape, you've got literally 50, 60, 70 terroirs. And my biggest thing, what I thought was, why don't we take, say, the same cultivar, and at that stage it was Sauvignon Blanc, go and buy some vines from the growers, plant one in, say, Wellington, one in Paarl, one in Stellenbosch, one in Durbanville, one in Hermanus, 5 years later, that same cultivar, that same vine, it tastes completely different. And I thought that's what we really, really need in our lives. Even if it's the same cultivar, I would really like to blend terroirs, because we're the only country in the world that can do that and can showcase to somebody in the UK who's used to pretty much everything. Here's one cultivar, but from 5 different terroirs or maybe 20 different vineyards. And the first one I did was a white blend. And I wanted to showcase that South Africa, the diversity, and it was really difficult because my aim was for wines to age. In South Africa, that didn't work. If a wine was, and Ben would know that, if a wine was older than 2 years, people felt really sorry for you and they were like, couldn't you sell the wine? And we always joke when Johannesburg comes down to Cape Town, they want 20, the vintage, 20, 25. They want nothing under that. It must still be on the vine pretty much, and going straight into the bottle. And then made it really difficult for us. And what I thought was, how are we going to change South Africans' perspective to aging wines, number one? Secondly, blending of terroirs. And then third biggest thing I wanted to do was put a screw cap on that. It was dead, even worse, and then 100% dead. I could not sell a bottle of wine. But I believed in it, and I started doing a white blend called, and even myself did a thing called the Great White Tasting, where he did a more Mediterranean style, I did a more Bordeaux style, where I would use Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, and Semillon. But what I did, I would work with about 20 to 30 farmers. So I would buy the best grapes from all of these different guys, ferment them all separate, and then slowly start blending them back together to create that vintage. So every year, there would be anything from 15 to 25 vineyards in one bottle. And I love that. And the UK is my favorite market in the world, always been. And we started sending wine to the UK, and they understood this. And they thought, wow, this is kind of old world meets new world, 25 vineyards in one bottle from 3 cultivars. And it was kind of that Chablis style that I wanted people to understand, that came from the new world without using Chardonnay. And I started doing these things, and it became really popular. It went to a lot of Michelin star restaurants and everything. And then people in South Africa were like, wow, we would also like to taste that. Now back to where we are tonight. I did the white blend 06, 07, 08, 09, 10. And 10 was my last one. This is the current vintage I'm selling, and Museum Wines has got that. The wines is just getting better. I'm actually drinking the 06 right now, and it's not a lot that you would have a wine from the new world that is 20 years old and screw cap and just getting better. So 2010 is my last vintage, and when that sells out, that I've got the t-shirt. We're not going back to that one. Then I started thinking, but what is the next step? And then a wonderful person, Rosa Krier, a viticulturist, came across our road. And she started saying, but in South Africa, they're pulling out all the old vines. And this is going to be a big thing for South Africa because we're busy losing our heritage. And she started phoning me and the millennials and Epen and a couple of us, about 8 of us. And she would say, please buy these grapes and make wine from this, because the farmers are pulling it out because it's not viable to make wine of this anymore. So what we did is we started making these wines, but I wanted to put them in the blend. And then this new beautiful thing came, the Old Vine Project, where a vineyard has to be 35 years old or older to qualify for that little sticker. And I'm sitting doing this, and these lovely people are selling, okay, this is not that sticker, which says the vintage, not the vintage, the age of the vines. So what I did was, I thought these vines are too good. I just can't keep them or blend them. I would really like to showcase that. And I think the older I got, the more I start understanding the history of the vine, the quality of the grapes, and working in the vineyard more than in the winery. And it became quite a big thing. And I just want to find out, Daniel, are we tasting the Langpad first?
No, we are not tasting Langpad. I think we have not included Langpad just because I think everyone has tasted it already. Okay. To within an inch of its life. It's okay. So we're tasting the Chenin Blanc 20.
Okay, wonderful. 20. Right, I've got that bottle here. So what I wanted to do with these wines was to showcase our history, number one. Secondly, that an old vine has got this depth that the younger vines doesn't have. And I always say, people ask me, does all old vines make good wines? They write thesis on thesis in Stellenbosch University, and nobody can come up with an answer. I'm a winemaker and I like thinking easy. And I always say to them, no, it depends. It's like an old person. Not all old people are nice people. It depends on their terroir. For me, that's exactly the same thing. And what I wanted to do with this one is I wanted to make Chenin Blanc that showcases our diversity. Because I am a winemaker and I get bored really, really easy, I wanted to showcase the different towns, terroirs, and styles. So I never tried to copy the same vineyard. But 2020 is honestly, 2013 became a cult wine in England and it's still doing really well. And I did a 15, 16, and then a 20. Yeah. If the wine I made was not up to standard, I just don't bottle it. I sell that right. So this is a really, really interesting one. This is from Swartland. And I only produced 9 barrels of this one. The vineyards is 1971. And it's interesting because there's 4 terraces. Saskia is the number 1. Then it's me, then it's Chris Arlight, and then it's Trezan. And I never made a Chenin Blanc from Swartland, and I was really, really curious to see. But I was also scared that the wine would be too big, too overpowering, and too in your face. And I hate that styles. I wanted to showcase to people that South African white wines can be classic, but still have a long length. It's mature and it carries and it ages phenomenally. So I picked this one, and the beautiful thing of this is the alcohol is only 11.5 on this. This is a single vineyard. I know the previous one in 2018 was 2 vineyards that I blended. What I do is I go into the vineyard before harvest, and I literally go try to do as closer to harvest time it comes. I'm one of those winemakers. I hate analysis because I believe that's for the clever people and that's on me. I would like to taste the grapes. I would like to show, because I always say to the young guys as well, every vineyard, you wait a year for this wine to produce its fruit. You put a lot of money and effort in there. You've got one chance. You can't make a mistake and then go back and say, you know what, I would actually have picked it later, or I think I made a mistake. You taste the grapes over and over and over. And I always say vineyards has got a 3-day window where everything just comes together, where the acidity, the sugar levels, the everything showcases that diversity of that terroir. And then you can't say, but I'm quite busy this week, I'll harvest it next week. This year was crazy. I mean, we had heat wave on heat wave on heat wave. And I picked my grapes, I think, 2.5 weeks earlier than ever before, but it was perfect. And for me, the 2020 was one which I was really scared, because I didn't want that full Swartland, so heavy, almost cloyy sit on your tongue. I still wanted that fresh, crisp air. And I think I captured it with this one. It was interesting because Miles Mossop, the top terrace, he picked it for a couple of years for Saskia. And I went in and I knew I had to pick these grapes tomorrow. 100%, I have to pick this. And Miles phoned me about a week later and he said, Ian, I think there's a big problem. Somebody harvested the wrong thing. I think they took your grapes. And it was like, no, Miles, that was me. He said, how could you pick now? These grapes will only be ready in about a week or 2. And I'm really happy I did, because I think I captured that thing. And I really wanted to showcase that Swartland can bring crisp, fresh, darling almost to the ocean side, that refined classicness, but with layers. And I think this one is going to age crazy. because when you decant this wine, it just gets better and better and better. And it's one of those wines. I wish I had 10 times more of this, because I think in 5 years and in 10 years and in 20 years, it's actually going to show. And I always say to people like Daniel as well, when you sell this wine, tell people to decant this, put it in the fridge for an hour or two, and then decant this wine and serve this over a couple of hours. What I like is, as Greg Sherwood and a couple of other guys always say, they don't taste my wine and rate it. They taste it over 3 days, because they three, it actually shows the best. But I'm getting really thirsty and I would love some questions. Anyone? Yeah.
Fire away, people. Don't be shy. Anyone wondering? And Ian mentioned about how well this wine ages. The previous vintage was 2016 when we got our first shipment end of last year. We got both vintages, and there is still some available in the UK if you happen to go to Core by Claire Smith, which is arguably the best restaurant in the world, some might say, but definitely in London or England, it's often rated the top restaurant in the UK at the moment. So save your pennies and pop in there. If you're on your own, you can have a magnum of Coindriff, which is one of Ian's Semillons, which he only made, I think, 30 magnums.
Yes.
No normal size bottles, just 30 magnums, and 2 of them are at Core. Well, they might be gone. Gareth might have sold them, but
I was going to say no bias from a South African sommelier there.
No, not at all.
No. Daniel, what's the next one?
Next wine is Upa Willem 2019.
Oh,
so
nice.
the new vintage. We had the 2018 last year, and we sold all of that. Actually, I think that there's maybe 12 bottles of the 18 left.
Okay.
So we're on to the 19 now. It's actually the first time I'm trying it, so I'm excited. It's ready to go.
Okay.
Just one question on the Chenin. How do you have
please.
How do you have the conviction to pick so early? Because it is fascinating, right? It is a brave call and goes against the tide of where most people would pick. So how do you have that conviction? And is that a big part of your winemaking intention, right? Because it is always a lot fresher and not as vibrant, but intense in a different way. I love that in your wines. But how do you have that conviction to pick that early?
That's a really, really good question. I think it drives me kind of crazy always, Robbie, when wine writers goes, the top people in the world goes, we can taste any of your wines blind in the world and we would know it's your style. And I would go, what's my style? And they go, I don't know. It's like, yeah, thanks for the help there, mate. Because I'm really trying to get to my style. For me, I hate full-bodied, over-extracted, heavy wines. I drank that for too long. And I felt that we lost the beauty, the finesse, the classiness of that. And I changed my whole way of winemaking. And I hope I can answer this for this one. Sitting in Greece now, I once read on a Greek island, an old winemaker wrote on his winery in Greek, and then luckily in English at the bottom. He said, terroir is to take a liquid photograph of a specific ecosystem and to put that in a bottle. And I thought, why didn't they ever tell me this story? Because we were trying to get our personality and our style and what people want in there. And I moved away completely from that, completely. And I took quite a bold step. And I thought, I'm going to make the wines that showcases the diversity of that vineyard. And for me, if I look at the vineyards and I grow with them, that 3 days is where the classicness, but the liveliness, but the depth and everything comes together. And that's my style. I really get bored of big wines. And I really got bored with especially new old wines that was jumping out of the glass and it's fantastic. And then it just disappears. For me, I want that balance of old world, new world. and I want some flavors, but I'm not big on things jumping out of the glass, because the older they get, the better they integrate. I'm more on middle palate and length. And in South Africa, it's incredibly difficult, incredibly difficult to get minerality on your wines, because it's there. But you turn around and it's 40 degrees again. And you hear on the news, okay, there's a heat wave coming for the next 2 weeks, anything from 38 to 45 degrees. So for me, it is when I pick, I try to capture that minerality, because if I don't have that, I feel it's not my wine. And it was a bold step. And it's interesting because I think the whole South African industry is turning to this lower alcohols, number one. And secondly, more balanced wines than new world in your face wines. But for me, it is just, for me, 100%. It's that capturing that vineyard when I think it showcases it best. When it's still got that minerality, but it's got the fruit, but it's got the length as well. I hope that answers the problem.
Yeah, it does. It'll still be a mystery to me how they can be like so powerful in flavor and in profile, but not that powerful in terms of how you'd consider other powerful wines.
Yes, yeah.
It's a style which is very hard to describe and difficult to put your finger on. And I think it's what you describe, so many people describe as your signature. It's an awful lot of power, but no real conventional power. It's like a power from another source, you know?
Yeah. For me, it's just showcasing, because I got really tired of people when they said, I don't drink South African wines, they're too big. And I wish I could have said, you're wrong, but they were right. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go the other direction. But I did not set out that I'm going to make lower alcohol wines. The alcohol for me every year is a big surprise, because I don't look at anything. I honestly, I would become an alcoholic in harvest if I had to look at the sugar that I pick, because it was interesting. This year I picked the Columba, the Lampert Columba. And in that heat wave, and I picked it, and one student who helped us in the vineyard, in the winery, he actually did a test, and he came running to me and he said, Uncle, I think you made a big mistake. The grapes are green, they're green, if we look at the analysis. And I said, no, they're not. And he said, I'm pretty sure I've never seen grapes picked at 17 volume. And it's like, let's see the result. And now when I look back, I think if I picked it literally 2 volume more, I would have lost all the flavors. Yeah, so for me, it's more a personal thing, I think, trying to showcase the classicness of South Africa than trying to bring fruity, cheerful wines that dies in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? Thanks for that. Opa Willem. Opa Willem is a wine that I made that, it's really close to my heart. Opa meaning grandfather in Afrikaans. And I made this wine literally for my grandfather. And Cinsault is the other grape variety that I started using, which was crazy. And Daniel, are we tasting the Cinsault or not?
Yeah. Next.
Okay. So I'm going to tell the story quickly of Cinsault now. We got to Opa Willem. Cinsault was, I phoned Rosa Creer and I said, Rosa, I think the next best thing is going to be Cabernets from Stellenbosch. It's going to make a comeback. And I really think I should get old vines in this, and I want to showcase blah, 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 the whole story. And she phoned me one day and she said, listen, I found the vineyard. And it was in Darling. And I thought, okay, old bunch. And my defense is, she said, she called me and said, the vineyard is here. And I said, send a pin, and I went to see. My defense is it was winter and the vineyards were pruned. And I went to this vineyard and I just fell in love with this vineyard. And I thought, no, I have to make wine. This is fantastic. I signed everything and I did everything. And 2 weeks later, Rosa called me and she said, what are you going to do with the Cinsault? And I said, what Cinsault? And she said, the block you signed for in Darling. And I said, but that's Cabernet. And she said, no, that's not Stellenbosch. And I said, but why did you phone me for Cinsault? I never asked you for Cinsault. And she said, no, I just thought that block would work for you. So I signed for it and I thought, okay, I'm stuck with this. Nobody in South Africa are going to drink Cinsault because it's the oldest planted red variety in South, first planted grape in South Africa, 365 years, 56 years ago. And I thought, okay, it's cheap, it's cheerful, it's juicy. Every South African would say it's the first cheap wine I got drunk on. So what am I going to do with Cinsault? And it was one of those miracles that I think came across my road. And I was really surprised. I went to the vineyards because I didn't know what I was going to do with Cinsault. And I felt too stupid to tell the farmer, no, I'm not going to buy it. And he said, and I started tasting the grapes. And I thought, how did they make the Cinsault from these grapes? Because I don't understand this part. It's beautiful. It's fresh. It's almost that Turkish delight. To me, it's Southern Rhone, and I could see myself in France sitting on the beach with a glass of chilled red wine with this. And I thought, okay, I'm going to make this wine. And that was quite a difficult thing because making Cinsault is quite a difficult experience because it's a very difficult grape to work with. And I managed to do it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give it a different name and blah, 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 because nobody's going to taste and drink Cinsault. And I started making this, and I pitched it to a couple of top South African wine buyers, and they gave me names for cultivars and countries I've never heard of. And I was too scared to tell them, no, it's Cinsault from South Africa. So what I did was I thought, no, I have to bottle this, and I'll take that blind step. And then I went further and to Opa Willem. I was lucky enough with a guy in Camps Bay who has got a big selection of wine. And he phoned me and he said, listen, I've got this big selection of South African wines. It's too heavy. It's too big. I can't drink it anymore. I want you to come and taste. And I went to his house, and I started tasting wines from the oldest was 1969, 70, 71, 72, up till about 85. And we pulled these bottles, and I was stunned. But on the label, it said Stellenbosch Cabernet. And I knew this was not Cabernet because I know Stellenbosch Cabernet. And I knew this was the feed Cinsault because Cinsault was really big in those years, but nobody wanted to admit that it was Cinsault because Cinsault didn't sell. And I started phoning people, and I said, are these wines Cinsault? And they said, yes, it was Cinsault. And I thought, this is part of my heritage. I want to bring this wine back. This is who we are. This is what we fought for. This is, I mean, phenomenal wines. I mean, this is as classic as you're going to get. And then I thought, I'm going to do the same style, but I didn't know the blend. So I blended my Cinsault, which is the vineyards is, sorry, I'm on holiday, so I forgot all these things. 1978, this vineyard in Dali. And I thought, I'm going to use some of this Cinsault, and I'm going to blend Cabernet in there from Stellenbosch. And I would really like to do this old South African style heritage blend and bring it back. And I thought, I have to give this a name as well. And I thought the best thing I could do in the world is name this wine after my grandpa, my Opa Willem. And this wine was released, and it went to 5 stars immediately and made huge things. And I was so proud because I thought, we're actually bringing what we did well in the 60s and 70s, we're bringing back. So I blended the Shinne after the Cinsault from Darling is about 80%. And 20% of that is Cabernet, but I do Cabernets from different terroirs. The 2018, the Cabernet was from Durbanville, which is also on the west coast, so you also get the cooler climate, lower. And then 19, I did Stellenbosch Helsworster. You guys have been there. Dellergraaf, just on the other side of Dellergraaf, and I found this block. And just before I came here, I bottled the 2020. And every year I want to try to change the Cabernet component because I would like to put them together and showcase a little bit of a different diversity and a different style with the Cabernet. But the Cinsault is always about 80%. And then the Cabernet is always anything from 20 to 15%. And the balance to me is just crazy. And I think this is one of those wines that I'm the most proudest of because I think it showcases what we did way back. And it's the way forward for South Africa. And it's Cinsault, which is the oldest variety in South Africa, with classicness from the Stellenbosch, Durbanville areas. And I've just sent Daniel the 2019. I think it came there about a week or two ago. And it's beautiful if you taste the 18 and the 19. It's got the same thumbprint. The alcohol is also really, really in control. But it gives you a little bit more fullness. And you'll see this when you taste the Cinsault, exactly the same block. It just fleshes out that middle palate a little bit. And I'm very thirsty now. So I'm waiting for questions.
So
I've got a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
Alan.
Hi. I'm a South African who's been stuck under the clouds for 25 years, but so your picture in the background is making me very jealous.
Good.
I've not tasted this wine before. It's I can't wait to put it under the nose of some of the wine classes of fellows that I've been with, because they won't believe it's South African. So that's fantastic, is a good start. The question I have is, even with 20% of cab, you could easily blow this lightness of fresh fruit away, and yet the acidity is great, which you could get from the cab, but none of the big tannins overpowering it. It doesn't feel like it sent the alcohol through the roof either. So how did you maintain that lightness of touch on the Cabernet so that it didn't overpower the beautiful fragrance of the Cinsault?
Ellen, that's a good question. I want to say I'm jealous when I'm looking for that vineyard for the next cab. And I usually do that the year before. So when it's season and we harvest, I go to that vineyards. I go to a couple of vineyards. And it's that magic moment when the light bulb goes on and I taste it and I go, that's it, that's it. That's the one that's not going to overpower. That's the one who's not going to kill anything. That's the one that's going to marry. But then the difficult part is when I do the blending, I literally do blends from 75-25, 78. I'm not good with calculations, and then that part. And I follow them and I leave them open for quite a while. And then I'll go back to them, back to them, back to them. And I would switch the glasses around, and then I go to, it's that one. Where I think they complement each other beautiful, but without overpowering anything. And I think the two, and that's what I tasted in that 60s, 70s, 80s, where how beautiful that two came together without killing each other. But the Cabernet just fleshed out that middle palate. But it kept the liveliness and the fruitiness of the Cinsault alive. And I thought, going back, every year, it's a big part for me in harvest to go and taste Cabernets until I find that block where I go, okay, this is the one I'm going to harvest next year. And then jealously go into that vineyard, taste, and knowing my Cinsault, roughly where it would be picked, where the style is, and then trying to think, do I need a little bit more of liveliness, acidity? Do I need a little bit of fruit? And for me, I would definitely, 100%, I ferment them separate. And all my wines are naturally fermented. Not because I'm green or vegan or all those nice words. I just feel when a vineyard is 35 years and older, it's got its own DNA that I want to put in the bottle. And that DNA is mostly the yeast that itself brings. And the moment I put in a cultivated yeast, I take almost all the dignity away from the wine. And I don't want that. And that's exactly with the Cabernet as well. What I taste in that berries, and the day I taste, I know this is what the freshness and the fleshiness it's going to bring to the blend. But I want to keep it as classic and lengthy and minerally as possible. Thanks. More questions, please. Robbie. Ben, you have to ask something.
Well, this is well, I've got to say it's not the worst wine you've ever made.
Okay, I'm trying to read between the lines here.
Ian's former importer, whose name we do not speak, when Ian first made this wine, which is the 2018 vintage, said this is the worst wine you've ever made, which is wrong, very wrong. But it is. I would definitely say this is better than the 18. So
Really?
yeah, absolutely. But remembering trying the 18 for the first time and trying this for the first time, I'd say definitely it's got even more sort of grace and elegance and finesse. Sorry, there's a baby on the floor. He wants to pass him. He wants to say hello. And Alan was quite right. The alcohol has not been overblown whatsoever. It's only 11.5% alcohol, which is slightly ridiculous for any red wine, but it's coming out of South Africa. I was on a Bordeaux round table Zoom thing a few weeks ago, which was looking at modern Bordeaux, if there is such a thing, and how young winemakers or up and coming progressive winemakers are making Bordeaux in a more approachable style, which some of them there are. You can drink younger, sort of 2018s. However, what my point was that there is often when you get a fifth, I had a 15.5% alcohol Saint-Emilion the other day, and considering Bordeaux is supposed to be about terroir and supposed to be about tasting where the grape was grown, you had no idea where that grape had been grown. There was no Bordeaux identity to it whatsoever. It was boozy fruitcake. It had 24 months in new French oak. I mean, it could have been Mendoza Malbec. It could have been Barossa Cab. But it was Merlot, allegedly from Bordeaux. And I made the point that when winemakers are asked, why are the alcohols getting so high in Bordeaux? They said, well, it's getting hot, it's climate change, they have to be that high. And I used Ian's wines as an example, but that's actually not true. You can have Darling, Stellenbosch, Cinsault Cab blends, or Ian's Grenache, which is from Swartland, which is 12% alcohol. And there's a French winemaker whose name we don't talk about either. But he picks from the same vineyard, different rows, but he picks 4 weeks later and his Grenache is 15% alcohol. So it is possible to make powerful, because it's fleet of foot and there's a deft touch to it, but it's not light wine. It's got power, it's got gravitas, and it commands your attention, and it's 11.5% alcohol. So I think, Ian, we might have to, do you want to do some consulting in Bordeaux? See if we can get Chateau Margaux, or I know you don't like Bordeaux.
You know what, if I get paid in euros, when do you want to be there?
but I think you could make a Cab Franc, 100% Cab Franc from Bordeaux, 12% alcohol. And I think that would work really well, and it'd be exciting, and people would be interested to try something different. You just need a winemaker with a bit of guts to do it, like with the Cinsault revolution scenario. You just need someone who goes, you know what, I'm actually not going to make a 15% over-oaked, over-extracted Bordeaux. I'm going to make something that's 12%, and I'm going to put it in amphora, and it's going to be 100% Cab Franc. If you don't like it, so I'll hand back to Ian. There's a few questions. Alan's had a 14.5% Sancerre recently. There's quite a few of them around at the moment. 18, 19, and 20 were hot vintages. So again, there's the excuse, it has to be to make the wine dry. But I'm sure Ian would say that if you picked it a little bit earlier, rather than saying, no, no, we pick on this date. And that's the day. Ian should go and teach them. Yeah, so you're doing consultancy in the Loire as well now. Wine 4, Ben, is a natural sweet mourvèdre, Ian's dessert wine. And Robbie said, if you vinified and bottled the cab in isolation, would it have been higher alcohol, high tannin, full-bodied cab?
Can you just repeat again?
So if you'd made the cab as just a straight cab, would it have been higher alcohol, high tannin?
No.
Do you know what the alcohol was on the cab on its own?
Yeah, the cab for me is almost the one, and that's why I'm really scared of making it. I haven't found that vineyard that I would go, I have to do this on its own, because there's loose ends, and I feel sometimes when I want to pick, there's still too much greenness in it. But then the moment you leave the green, the greenness comes together, then it becomes so overextracted again. But I really, really, really want to make an old vine cab that in this category. For me, it is, and I hope I'm not going to step on toes here. The moment I moved away from ego and respected the vineyard, I got this. I'm tired of winemakers telling you it's climate, this, it's this, it's this. No, get into the vineyard and work in the vineyard. Because a lot of winemakers love sitting in an air conditioning vineyard and an air conditioning winery, looking at what we picked last year. And you know what? Yes, climate change is changing things. Because if I had to pick what I picked the previous 3 years on dates and time, all my wines would have, gone with this heat waves. You have to be in the vineyard, and you have to understand that vineyard. You have to grow with that vineyard, and you have to understand where that 3-day window is, where all those things comes together, where the Christmas is still there with it. And for me, saying, yeah, but climate change has changed, so I had to pick later, and that's the vineyard. That equals just you're lazy. You're lazy. You will not be in the vineyard, and at the end, don't respect the vineyards. But back to my wines, because I'm going to get in trouble again saying these things. It's just, I want to prove to these guys, no, I don't want to prove anything. I just want to say to these guys, if you live in South Africa and most of these wines comes from the Swartland, you have no excuse. You have no excuse. Because Swartland is supposed to be over-extracted, big, heavy wines, but we can do this. We can do this. So in France, you don't have that heat waves. You don't have those things. Rather be in the vineyard, understand the vineyard, and pick when the vineyard says it's correct. Right, but Ben, I'm waiting for your question.
No, just tell me what needs doing.
En je vra my vassie so. I'm just enjoying it. Like some of the wines that that we're tasting tonight, I've not had. Like I've not had this dessert wine yet, so I'm sort of just getting to grips with it. Yeah, no, look, it's great. How can I say, we've spoken so many times. I don't have a question for you.
Okay. Daniel is the next one, the Cinsault.
Yeah, Werfdans.
Okay. Werfdans. I told you the story before I went back to the vineyard, and how I didn't want to make it. And always people ask me, because I did the Colombar, which is the worst white grape variety in South Africa you could do. And it was voted as one of the top 50 white wines in the world by Cantor. I like to do things where you've got history and you actually realize that there's nothing wrong with the vineyard, but it's the way winemakers made it and over-extracted it and just screwed it up pretty much. Cinsault was one of them, and I'm the happiest person in the world because I feel these things, I never look for them. They find me. They come and it happens. So people always say, yeah, but you were the first one who did this. And it's like, no. This vineyards has been here 365 years. Sorry for that. I'm not that old. So I didn't plant them. I just got them later and worked with them. What's interesting for Cinsault is I could never understand. South Africa is a summer country. 9 to 10 months of the year, it's summer. but we drink this heavy, over-extracted, horrible, chewy wines. Why? And then I found the Cinsault, and I thought, this is what I want to do. Most South Africans will still not drink it because they think it's a little bit heavy for a rosé. I'm like, please don't taste the wines. Buy your rosé or whatever you want. Don't drink this. So for me, Cinsault was that thing, and again, England was the one who understood it, who put it on the map, who started actually working with it. And I had in my mind the Southern France wine, where you sit on the beach and you chill this, and it's going to age and it's got layers. And as I said, it's a very tricky wine to make because you have to understand that vintage 100% because your combination almost of the wine must be how much whole bunch am I going to do? Then you put the stem, crushed grapes on top, a percentage, and then I put stems back to get that tension back. But if you do that proportion wrong for that vintage, you're going to take the wine away. It's aged in old barrels, not for the wood. But this wine turns into brown colors. It just goes crazy. So I'm trying to keep it in small vessels as long as possible, fill it, and do as little as possible to this wine. Because what I pick in the vineyard is what I really, really want at the end in the bottle. It's one of those wines that if you taste, since it's from France, and you do a blind tasting, the South African Cinsault's got that Turkish delight rose petalness to it, which the French doesn't have. But it's also got a lighter, fresher style. And some of the French ones is beautiful on the palate and the balance is there and everything. Ours is just giving that, it's almost like a boost of freshness that I love. And it's a wine that's going to age perfectly. I gave it the name Werfdans, and the two South Africans would understand that. It's in Darling, which is during the winter. It's one of the most beautiful places because it's wheatlands. And when the wind blows, it's like these waves and waves. You drive, you see these wind going through the wheat, and it looks like these fields are dancing. But then you get back in summer, and all the wheat is cut, and it's just yellow, dry dust with the vineyards in there. And we get these little whirlwinds then on the wheat fields. And then the workers would always say, the devil is dancing today, these little things. And I thought, what a great thing in the wind, in the summer and the winter. It's these wheat fields that dance. And then in the summer, it's little wheat whirlwinds. And I thought, to me, describing the wine is this fields that's dancing, because Cinsault is dancing for me. It's Turkish light, it's rose petal, it's layers, it's fresh. And I always say to people, please serve this chill. The alcohol is nice and light, it's 12% alcohol, but it's one of those fresh summer drinking red ones that you just can have. It just ages perfectly. And if you decant this and you drink it over a couple of hours, it keeps on changing. It shows you layers and layers and layers of food. Questions, please, or anything. Daniel, this is a very quiet group. I'm getting worried.
No, I don't know what's up with everyone. Maybe it's Wednesday. Wednesday blues, not feeling weekend vibes yet. I mean, it has been 27 degrees today, and we're English, so we probably all and Welsh, and maybe there's some other denominations here, but we're all in the sun and feeling a bit weary.
I can ask another
I'm
question.
going to chime in, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm South African as well. I grew up in Paarl. I mustn't revert to Afrikaans because half the group won't know what I'm saying. Grew up in Paarl, went to university at Stellenbosch, and yes, when you grow up with good wine around you on the table every day, you just expect to drink good wine for the rest of your days. What I'm really loving is your love for Cinsault. It's refreshing. I mean, just tasted the unfortunately I joined in late and didn't to taste the first wine with you guys, but the Cab Cinsault combination is good. The third Cinsault single blend is absolutely, I mean, single varietal is absolutely lovely. The nose is just beautiful, beautiful. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm longing for home.
Oh, good. That's all I want you to do. You know what? A top wine writer in the UK, Davy is his name. I think the biggest compliment for me in the world, honestly, is when people say, I drank the wine and I was on holiday in South Africa and I long to go back. Or South Africans say, you know what, I drink this and I feel like this is home. Davy wrote one day on my wine, and I'm a winemaker, so we're not really good with words, or I mean accountancy, even less. And he said, I've never been to South Africa, but I hope one day I can go. And I want to go and sit in the Werfdans old vine Cinsault block, but nobody must tell me which vineyard this is. And I want to see if I can pick up everything that I got in the wine. And he said, and this was my favorite sentence, I think, ever in wine. He said, what I enjoy, it's like Ian holding up a mirror to nature. And I thought, okay, I can die now. I can die. I've done what I wanted to do. This is all I wanted to do, is showcase that. I really want to put that terroir in the bottle. I want to put that mirror of nature in the bottle, because I want people to understand when they go to this vineyard, that they would go there, go, wow, I understand this wine now. And for me, you have to grow with that vineyard. And I think the beauty of our old vines as well is that thing where you can, you've got the privilege almost as a winemaker to say, 1978, I'm going to put you in a bottle. It took you how many years to get here? And I always say, if you live in South Africa, anywhere in the world, and you survived all the droughts and the floods and the minus temperatures and the 45 degrees Celsius, you've got your own story to tell. My job is just to capture that story and put that in the bottle. And for me, Werfdans gave that beautiful word of the yard, the farms that's dancing. And that's in the bottle. Right.
There we go. Right. So Le Finale.
Okay.
So the natural
Mourvèdre. Okay. That is a wine that I'm quite surprised Daniel put on tonight. I was quite shocked when I saw that. I always say it's one of those wines also that found me. In London, in Mayfair, there was a club that sold a lot of my wine, and a French sommelier, and he always said to me, make a wine for me that goes with cheese. Now, that is impossible, number one, because which cheese, which wine, whatever. But I didn't want to offend the guy because he sells a lot of my wine, and I go, yes, of course I will do it. And then I see him about twice a year, and he says, how's my wine doing? And it's like, fantastic. And I think, okay, hopefully he's not here next year. And then a couple of years later, he's like, where's my wine? And I thought, okay, now I have to go back to South Africa because I hate sweet wines. I hate them. I don't understand them. I don't understand their place. I don't understand anything. And then I thought, okay, I couldn't tell this guy that I'm making this wine. And I found these Mourvèdre grapes in Swartland. And I tasted them and I thought, this is it. And I knew that I wanted to do something that I would like, but it was literally a barrel that I did for this guy. And I pick crazy high sugar levels. But what I also do is I go in the beginning of harvest, and I would take about 5% of the grapes. I would pick absolutely green. So the acidity is crazy. And I ferment that separate, and then I go leave the rest to go really high sugar levels. And then what I do is at the end, I blend them back together. And I always wanted a sweet or a dessert wine or whatever that gave you that balance, that gives you the sweetness, but it refreshes again. Because I could never understand at the end of the meal, you have a dessert and you have this beautiful glass of dessert that they bring you. And then you have this almost sickening sweet wine that just kills everything. And I wanted to do something where it refreshes again. And I made this wine and I took it to this guy and he went ballistic. And he said, this is exactly what we wanted. This is how we should have been. And it's one of those wines that I make. And in South Africa, I think in the top 10 restaurants, they serve this in about 8 of them on the tasting menu at the end. Because the chefs always says, it's crazy, you can change the dessert or the cheese, but this wine just works perfectly with the food that you serve. And I think that there's no rocket science in there. It's a 14% alcohol, sweet red wine that's just balanced with acidity. And it's something I think you've never tasted before. But serve it chilled on a cheese platter. It goes blue cheese, goat's cheese, anything. The only cheese it doesn't work with, if it's like peppercorns or apricots or things in there, it kills it. But if you serve this with a cheese platter and it's different cheeses, it almost brings out the saltiness and the freshness in all the cheese. But then it works incredibly well with strawberries and chocolate and all those things. It's just one of those wines that people who hate sweet wines loves it. People who love sweet wines loves it. And I always say there's an area in South Africa, quite far north, that only drink sweet wines. And I always say I should just put a straw connected to the bottle and send it to them, because they don't even want to decant this. They just literally want to put the straw in that wine and drink it. Yeah, but it's just, it was just something different I wanted to do.
I don't remember having anything quite like that before. It's really, really nice.
Ian, do you know the residual sugar on it?
Yes, 60.
60, which I think would make it medium sweet, maybe. I don't know where it sits on a
kind of semi sweet. Yes.
Okay. So I'd say either medium or medium sweet. I don't know where that reconciles with residual sugar, but to my palate, it certainly seems either medium or medium sweet.
Yeah, if the acidity wasn't balancing it out, you would have thought, whoa, this is too sweet. So 60 is quite high. Yeah. I mean, 100 would be crazy sweet. But 60 is in that top noble light semi-sweet wine, yeah. But the acidity balances it out, that you don't have that cloyiness or the peat structures in it, yeah.
How late are you picking this, Ian?
Literally, I'm going to get a lot of trouble tonight. I always tell the workers, it has to look like an old man's face. It has to be really wrinkled. The sugar levels must be out of control because I've got that. But I can't tell you the bunning on that one because I never measured. I taste it and I go, we're picking the sweet, yeah. But it's really sweet. And without the as I said, the acidity in the beginning, no, it would kill you. It would just be sweet syrup almost there.
Yeah, and where are they grown?
Swartland.
Swartland.
But on the warm side of Swartland, the middle part, where there's no mountains, it's just flat, and it's literally as the sun comes up and it ends, it just gets baked by it. But I love it because that's the cultivar that they use for making port. And I think you get that port in the sweetness, but not that stickiness, that fullness. And I love that because I think a woman once said who knew nothing about wine, she said, it tastes like a port. No, it tastes like a wine, but it smells like a port. And I thought, perfect. I should put that on the back of the bottle.
I must say, I had that immediate port. Like it just think of port as soon as I had the first sort of sniff and taste of it.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I think all of the wines tonight for me have, and it's your style, that they're not from a cool climate, but they've all got something of the cool climate about them.
Yeah. Yes, David, thanks for that. To me, that's the thing where I want to showcase South Africa's diversity. We can do old world meets new world. We've got the terroirs to work with. If you respect the terroirs, if you respect the vines, and you want to pick them in that classicness, we've got all the tools to do that. Thank you for that. Daniel, that's it.
There we go. That's the all the wines. We have drunk all the wines. Sorry, I've moved because I had to plug my laptop in, and this is the only place close enough. All my sockets too far away. So thank you all for joining us. That does bring us to the end of the tasting. If anyone has further questions still, do feel free to shout out or pop something in the chat box. I've just put a link in the chat box to Ian's section on our website. He's got his own little section where you can find all of his wines. Everything we tasted tonight is available in there, as well as a few of the other ones that he has mentioned. Also, as he said, we do have some of the 2006, 7, 8, and 9 blend. Only 12 bottles of each, or I think one of them we've got 18 of. I'm not sure which. So they're not on the website yet. I'm going to put them on probably tomorrow, and I'll send everyone who's here an email so you all get early access, because there is so little of it. But because you were all sensible enough to join us this evening, you get early access. But they are, we're not going to sell them individually. I think I'm probably going to do a pack, so it might be those 4 in a 4-pack, or I might pop some other things in there as a 6-pack, but that should be going online tomorrow morning or afternoon, and I'll send across an email as well as a link to the recording if anyone wants to watch back or share it with anyone else. So yeah, please do, if you're on Vivino, please do rate the wines. Some of them, because some of them are brand new, they don't have an official Vivino rating yet. So it's once you get up to 25 ratings, it will then give us an official average, and then the algorithm picks it up and starts to recommend it to other people, so more people can find out about Ian's amazing wines. Obviously, we don't want too many people to find out about Ian's wines. There's not much of them.
Don't listen to
spread the word, spread the love, say nice things about them. If you didn't like them, then please keep it to yourself.
Yes, please.
I think, Ian, you've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Vivino, right? So
yes,
we need to up the scores, I think. Because I don't think the Vivino scores for Ian's wines reflect the wines.
especially coming from another South African.
Daniel, just one question on the ones you're going to put on tomorrow, because I've been putting my basket together while we've been chatting. And so is that like a special thing you're sending to this group that's on the side? Special thing you're sending to the side. Wow.
Sorry, my internet, I was too far away from something. The internet went bananas. So I think I heard most of that. You're putting a basket together, and you want to add one of these packs. So I mean, we've actually got a promo on at the moment. I mean, if you get free shipping, if you go over £80 at the moment, which is for something else, but it works on every wine. So if you're spending more than £80, you could just do it in 2 orders and we'll sit together.
No, that wasn't the question. The question was, if you've got these older wines, are you just going to put them up and we can integrate them in one order, or was that a separate process?
There'll be a product on the website, so you can just put it in a normal basket with the other wines and pay for everything all in one go. Yeah, that would work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is it from me. Ben, I've seen your message, so I'll make sure you're included on the email tomorrow. There is anything else? No, that's it. We're done for the evening. Thank you to everyone for joining. And I hope you enjoyed it. And as I say, I look forward to seeing any Vivino ratings. If anyone's putting them on there, see what you thought of the wines. I think Ben was actually, that's what I was going to say before the internet went bananas. What Ben said about the Vivino scores not actually accurately reflecting how good they are. I mean, it's the general public on there, and whilst you'd hope that most of them have a bit of an idea about wine, you probably get some Sauvignon drinkers on there who get confused. You might get some South Africans who think Grenache should all be 15%, and if it's got any sort of finesse to it, that it's bad. So yeah, obviously there are all these sort of contributing factors which link to it. But I mean, the Verf dance we tried this evening, I think has an average rating of 4.6 at the moment, which I think is the minimum it deserves, which is a phenomenal score for. I mean, a lot of the wines that we have, which are 4.6, 4.7 rated on Vivino, are several £100 a bottle, over 100 easily. Stuff like Sassicaia, some American stuff, which is £645 a bottle, and this is £39.99. So there we go. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks.
And you'll get an email tomorrow. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks
Bye
everyone.
bye, guys. Keep well. Bye bye.
Night.
Ian.
Far from done for the evening, by the way, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
Take
Cheers.
care.